This video was made possible with the help of Game Toppers. Upgrade your gaming experience with a Game Topper.
Hello chaps and chapettes, and welcome to a Kickstarter that everybody should... We'll discuss that later. In this video I'm going to be showing you a game set in space. And space is not the final frontier when it comes to our imaginations. In fact, we go above and beyond the... That sounds like a title for a TV show. Yeah, but we go above and beyond the reaches of our imagination by creating alien worlds which are completely different and aliens which are completely different. And this game is no exception. In fact, with the recent re-release of the new version of Dune coming, thinking about it, this game actually reminds me of Dune. In fact, Dune 2, which was on the Amiga many moons ago. But instead of players fighting for spice, players are going to be fighting for the warp. So, to start off, each player will be set on the board at equal distance from each other. You'll all have the same number of buildings and the same number of troops. You'll also have 3 different personal objectives, each from the 3 categories in the game. There are also some common objectives that any player can do at any time. Now, each player is equal distance away from each other, but they're also equal distance away from the warp. And you'll choose a warp monster at the beginning of the game at random from a large selection. Each warp monster has their different amounts of units that they use to attack, and the level of the ground that they're on, and also how many points they will be if they conquered, if you have control of the warp, and at the end of the game. They'll also be allocated a number of random abilities and powers up from a selection of tokens. You'll also have your own player board recording all the statistics of your race. The amount of troops you can recruit each turn, the amount of energy you can produce, the amount of gold you can produce, and the amount of free trades you can do on your turn. It also records all the upgrades that you do on your buildings, which will help multiply the amount of resources that you gain during the course of the game. So far, so equal. So where's the fun of the game come from? It comes from the alien races that you're going to choose to be. You're not just going to be one alien race, you're going to be 2 alien races. You're going to split this deck into a certain amount of cards, into 2, and you're going to draft 2 aliens from these 2 decks each. Every alien has 2 abilities. Their first ability can be used once per turn on their turn, and the second ability can be unlocked by spending rewards, which are won through combat. So you may be a time-bending miner who actually can spend some energy to do 2 actions instead of the obligatory 1, and whenever you terra shift, you gain a resource from the area you're terra shifting. After everybody has chosen their 2 races that are going to be working for them, you're going to choose 2 more at random, and these are going to be the exiled aliens, which are scattered throughout the planet. Some are hidden, and the others that are close to you, you can see how many troops there are and what race they belong to. Again, these aliens have their powers, and some of the powers can be used when they are attacked, or some of these powers can just be generally used by any player on their turn. Now, players are also going to receive a different amount of resources depending on the turn order. They will obviously have all of their troops, they will have a set amount of gold and a set amount of energy, and that's it for the resources. This gets hidden behind your shield, and you also will receive a set amount of archive cards. And that is it. Starting with the first player, they will start performing actions from the 3 phases on their turn. The first phase is the income phase. And the first thing that players will get to choose is whether they want to recruit troops or get resources. You'll reference your track to see how many of each you will get. Recruiting a troop will put it next to your command center, or you can collect the amount of energy and gold depending on how much you're actually producing from your gold mine and your energy plant. At any time during your turn, you can do the trade action and do an exchange for the amount of exchanges that is indicated by your track. After that, you can then consult. You can discard up to 3 archive cards from your hand to gain the resources marked on the bottom left-hand corner. And then you draw 2 more archive cards, either from the market or blind from the deck. That concludes the first phase. The second phase is the action phase, and this is where the archive cards come into effect. You'll choose to perform one of 3 possible actions. The first action is to build. To build, you play simply one of your yellow build cards or upgrade cards to build that building or upgrade that building. All costs require either gold, energy, a combination of both, and possibly maybe some other archive cards. Constructing a building, you can add it to any of the spaces that you control with one of your troop, as long as there's not already a building of the same type there. And in regards to the energy and gold, you need to make sure that the terrain there is actually worthy of producing gold and energy. Upgrading is simply a case of moving one of your tokens up a notch. This is a multiplier. So let's say that I have 2 gold mines and I now have upgraded a gold mine to level 2. What I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the 2 gold mines by the level that I have, which will be 4. And as you can see on the track, when I do the income phase the next time and I say I want the resources, I'm actually going to get 2 gold and 1 energy. This multiplication works for all of your buildings. You multiply the number of buildings that you have under your control by the upgrade ability level that it is. Once you've built something, the other players now have an opportunity to build something as well. They look at their cards. If they have a build card and they want to build something in an area that they control and they have the resources, they can also do it. And for each player that does actually follow you and build something themselves, you get to choose a resource of your choice, either gold or energy, to add to your reserves. Now there are a few other things that you can build on the build turn which will help you in combat. The security tower, once installed, will add a +1 to all your defensive rolls for the troops in that area. Any laser cannons that you have can be activated for 1 or 2 energy, and that will give you that many dice to roll, and on a 4, 5 or 6 they will destroy a troop in a zone at least 2 spaces away. And then there's the assault ship, which will help your troops move 2 spaces instead of 1. And they will also have a benefit depending on how many upgrades that you have. This will then replace the terrain that you've left with the value of the upgrade of your assault ship. But instead of building, you might want to do a bit of terra shifting. Now, the terra shifting involves these numbers scattered throughout the board. That is the level of the terrain there. They range from 1 to 4, and you can adjust 2 of these, augmenting one number and descending another. But they always have to be territory that you control or territory that nobody else controls. Again, once you've terra shifted, it goes around the table and every other player can also terra shift, but only one terrain, either augmenting the number or making it go down. For every player that does so, you get to draw an extra archive card. And you can only have a maximum of 8 cards in your hand at any time. So anytime you go over 8, you need to discard some cards, not collecting the resources. But instead of building or terra shifting, you might want to go for the attack. In the attack phase, you simply move a group of troops. So in this case, I have 4 in my base, and I'm going to attack these guys over here. I always have to leave 1 troop remaining in the space that I came from and add the troops to the zone adjacent. The number of troops that are involved in the combat is the number of dice that you are going to roll. And you also need to take that into consideration when you're looking at maybe an exiled alien. How many daggers are there? That means how many dice they're going to roll. Also, if you attack another player, you need to look at how many troops they have there as well. You also need to take into consideration the terrain as well. The attacking player looks at their archive cards and possibly chooses one to play in combat. They will play this face down. Any other player can play as an exiled alien and play one card face down as well. Or obviously, if the player is actually attacking another player, that player can also possibly play a battle card as well. Before these battle cards are revealed, there is the bribe phase, which means that the active player then could possibly make a bribe to the player that has played an archive card, if another player has played an archive card. They say, well, you know, get rid of your card, just discard your card, put it back in your hand, and I'll pay you a gold. You know what? No, make that 2 gold. And that player may discard that card if they wish, replacing it back into the hand. After this little bribe has passed, the defending player can also do the same to the attacking player. Once that's done, then any remaining cards are revealed. And an action is chosen from the selection marked. Sometimes there are 2, sometimes there are 3 options to choose from. The resources are paid, and this is taken into consideration into the attack. It might add some dice. It might make you re-roll some dice. Now the dice can be rolled. You'll roll the number of dice of the troops that you have put into combat. You'll also roll any modifiers, and that will be your end result. You then multiply this result by the terrain that you are either defending or the terrain you left to attack this terrain that you are now on. So in this case, if these troops had moved here, they have a multiplier of 3. So you multiply their result by 3. Whereas the defenders have a multiplier of 1. The player with the most is the winner and keeps control or takes control of that area. If you lose the battle when you were attacking, you will have to go back to where you came from and you'll lose 1 member of your troop. But if you win the battle, you get to collect a reward card. A reward card will have some kind of benefit or bonus that you can use immediately if you wish, or at any time during the game, or you can save these rewards because, as I said, your alien's second power needs X amount of rewards to activate that power. And then finally, there's the end phase. Players can reposition 2 troops anywhere in the zones that they control, and then they will reveal any exiled aliens if they've moved into a new area. And finally, if they have completed any of their objectives and they are missing one, they can actually pay for an objective. Yes, these objective cards can be completed at any time. So you may do a build action and, oh, this one's done, I get these points, and you place it in front of you. That's a player's turn. And as soon as one player arrives at 9 points, this will trigger the end game. There will then be 2 or 3 rounds, depending on the number of players, for the other players to try and get as many points as possible. Once this is done, the game ends, and the player with the most points is the winner. So let's talk about my first impressions of the game. I've played it twice with a 2-player count and 3-player count. It goes down really well. It's a very kind of, for this kind of 4X game, it's very simple to pick up because of the way that the turn flow works. Players are going to be constantly invested in the game because you always get a chance to perform an action even when it's not your turn. And maybe you're interested in whether they're recruiting more troops to the board or if they're just going for the resources. Again, you're going to be looking at the other players' player boards to see what track they're going to develop on, because one of the major ways to score 3 points is to fill your track up to the top. So you upgrade your gold mine by level 3 and then you build all 4 gold mines. Therefore, you get the 12, which gives you 3 points, and also it gives you special bonus as well. So you're not just getting 3 gold when you ask for resources, you're also getting a bonus reward card every time you win a reward card, and plus you can flip a die on its back when you're in combat, which is a very useful power. All the powers are really, really good for the aliens themselves. They're all hyper strong, kind of like Marco Polo, and you get 2 of these guys, which is great because you got this kind of small world element where you combine two powers together, two creatures together to get a special power, and I like that. It really adds a different flavor to the game. And then you've got the warp boss, which is going to be different every time, and they have their own different powers. Well, they don't have their own different powers, but they have their own different strength and rewards as well. The fact that there are technically 3 resources, but 2 of them are the ones that you're going to be using the most. The troops are a resource technically, but not technically. Yeah, having this lower kind of, you haven't got 15 different resources to worry about is a blessing. But on the other hand, you've got 15 other things to think about. You've got to think about the cards in your hand, what you're going to do with them. You need to think about your powers. You need to think about the powers of the exiled aliens as well. And maybe you want to use that power at some stage. And then you have to think about your objectives. And then you also have to think about the common objectives. And so you've got all that information to worry about, which kind of like balances the scale out. You got a few resources and you've got this few little tracks here. That's the easy part, but it's all that other information which will occupy your servo, your brain. So apart from the actions being very, very simple to perform, unfortunately there's a lot of icons for you to learn, but it all comes on the back of here on your hiding shield, and so you've got it all at a reference there. But after a while, you do pick it up pretty quickly. The way that the icons tie in with each other does sink in, but it takes a while, as I said, because there's quite a lot of iconography in the game. The components for this prototype are very good. I love this 3D printing. You can tell which building is which. It's a bit somber, very dark, and so sometimes it's a bit hard to see things, but it doesn't impair on the game too much at the moment. I like it. I love the artwork of the aliens. It's just enough flavor to give you the feel of the theme. For a 4X game, this game actually concentrates a lot more on developing, expanding, exploring. There is combat, but it's not like you think. There's not a lot of attacking the other players. There's always the threat. You're always on the edge of the seat. Again, this interactivity comes on. When a player says they're going to attack and they're right next to you, are they going to attack you? I mean, the benefits of that is, yeah, they can, if they win, they get your buildings. Your buildings are lost and they get them instead. So your tracks go down, their tracks go up, which is very daunting. But most of the time, you're just expanding into the zones where the exiled aliens are, and you're getting the land there because maybe it's a mission objective which is telling you to do so. And so you're the game kind of guides you with the mission objectives. You could do this and you could do that, but to win the game, you need to really go for these objectives. The combat system is really great. When you're playing, you're thinking this terror shifter thing is a waste of time, but it's not. It's actually very useful to have your army high on a hill and then charge down into the gully where the defenders are and wipe them out pretty easily. And it's that multiplier thing which really kind of makes the combat interesting for me. I mean, it's a mathematical problem. And again, you've always got that worry that if you're going to attack an exiled alien, is someone going to defend them? And what card are they going to use? Going back to the objectives, this is the meat of the game. You're basically going for these, and at the beginning of the game it can be hard to do some of them because you might have picked up like 2 pointers and they're kind of like mid-game objectives which are quite hard to get to, and it can be a little bit disheartening when you see other players are doing 1-point missions pretty quickly, just go and take a gold mine from somewhere. And it's like, well, okay, yeah, they're scoring easily and I'm struggling. But the game does kind of balance itself out, because if you choose a route, you can kind of stick to it, but eventually after you've achieved that objective, your next objective might be something completely different, and so you've got to start again. So as well as the simple rules that there are just some basic things that you need to remember, that you're not allowed more than 8 cards in your hand. Dice value can never pass by 6, but once you've learned that, then the game just flows very, very smoothly, and it's quite an enjoyable experience. You're glued to the table constantly with this interaction. So to sum up, really enjoyable experience. I've played Twilight Imperium, and this is no way as heavy as Twilight Imperium and no way as boring as Twilight Imperium. We were always engaged at the table. There was always something going on and something that you could do on your turn, whether it be help defend a zone for the exiled aliens, or maybe do an action that the other player was doing. And this is a pretty kind of, it feels quick, but it's actually a long game. You're looking at 90 minutes plus. The game does start you know, the engine starts rolling, and all of a sudden objectives are being done, and objectives are being done, and before you know it, someone's on 9 points. And the game just kind of like whizzed by, you know. It kind of did leave you feel that, you know, you could do with a few more rounds to do this and do that, and then you'd be happy with what you built, which is good, which is always a sensation that you like from a game, when it's like, I just needed a few more turns. And that brings you back to the table to replay it. And it had that. There's a lot of replayability with the different aliens, the different powers, how they interact with each other. Because again, as I said, you're not just using your aliens, you're using the Xrd alien powers as well. Whether it's using them to defend a space, or whether it's, you know, they're slavers. And you can just like pay 2 gold and take one of their slaves, and you've got an extra troop. I like it. The theme is there, the feeling is there. It's not as action-packed. This is more thinky and more strategic moving. And again, there's a bit of luck with the drawing of the objective cards. I would advise checking this out when it comes to Kickstarter. It's going to have a 5 and 6 player expansion with it, and apparently a solo player mode as well. So that's my thoughts and feelings for The Warp. If you want a kind of slightly heavier than family style game, because I did manage to get my wife to play this, which is surprising, and you like space and you like conquering and commanding, this is probably one to check out. So I'll leave a link in the show notes below for the Kickstarter when it comes out. So there you go. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you know someone that might be interested in this game, share this video with them. And if you want to check out all the other things that I've been doing in the board game world, you can go to my website, boardgameseverybodyshould.com, where there are some posted reviews. There's some video reviews like this. There is the Berkey and Badger Board Game Babble podcast, which is posted there. There is also all the board game soundtracks that I do, which are posted there as well. So go and check that out. And until next time, scream, because in your house no one can hear you scream, apart from your neighbours.
Just sitting at the table next to Felicia would be quite nice. Wouldn't it be good? I got some board games.